I'm done queuing top lane, queuing mid now. Everybody who plays top lane, including myself, every streamer you know, every top lane player you know, they all quit this game or the role. We don't want to play this dark anymore.
The top lane has always had a tumultuous record in League's history, dating all the way back to the first ever meta and continuing across now going on 17 years. To call it one of the most agency diminishing experiences of all time wouldn't be the most controversial statement. With no shortage of empirical data, anecdotal recounts, and overall player sentiment, it has become an extremely polarizing lane for many. Some call it the worst role in the game, and others call it the single most disgusting balance atrocity ever made. Obviously, it comes down to one's own lived experience as to whether or not they believe top lane truly is that absurd. But what captures my and I'm sure many people's curiosity is why the role feels that way. One would assume, being the so-called island of the map, repercussions of what goes on there shouldn't carry much import across the map. Yet at the same time, when you think of 1v9 champions, the overwhelming majority come from top lane that it beggars belief how the role could be perceived in such a helpless way. For today, I wanted to discuss the miserable experience of top lane, how it can simultaneously be a role so devoid of agency, yet one whose negative experience can and often does spread across the map insidiously. I got this idea when taking a long hard look at the current state of top lane. Being a top main myself, I have far too much to say about this role, and it would be difficult to contain my bias against it. But after looking it up online and reading hundreds of comments from other players, there appears to be a consensus of some kind as to why it's a miserable experience in the first place. There are a number of points and evidence to attest to the sentiment that it's the least enjoyable role in the game to play. While some would declare ADC the most miserable role on account of the extreme mechanical requirement and persistent threat of being top priority for the enemy team to shut down, at the same time much of the game is predicated around bot lane from a circumstantial point of view, meaning your actions can have greater immediate impact on the game. Conversely, because so little attention is given to top lane, the same question can be thrown back in the other direction. While some would declare top lane mistakes have the lowest consequence in a game, that can also be interpreted as top laners being overly dependent on so-called coin flipping every game for the better team. This doesn't by any means constitute a smoking gun argument, but I remember a while back, Tyler 1 underwent a project to attempt to reach Challenger in every single role in an effort to prove he's not just a Draven one-trick. Top lane was far and away the most difficult for him to achieve. He was able to reasonably hit Challenger within I believe half a year for mid lane and support, while jungle took him about a year. Top lane though took almost 3,000 games and a year and a half for him to achieve, making it by far the most difficult role for him to hit Challenger on. That's not exclusive to only him either. If you look at the Challenger leaderboards in every single server, you'll find something quite interesting. Top lane frequently has the lowest number of Challenger players, or around the lowest depending on how many supports are up there, which at a surface glance would imply top lane is the hardest role to hit Challenger with. And while that is true in my opinion, at the same time, among the few challengers in top lane, most of them are sitting very comfortably in the upper half of all Challenger players. At one point earlier this year, Viper, a prominent Riven main, had such a stranglehold over Apex Elo that I believe he had 3 accounts all in the top 10, and he's not the only one either. What this means is Challenger might have the fewest number of top laners compared to other roles, but the ones who do make it to Challenger are so good at the game they basically outperform every other role in Challenger on average. But if these top laners are seemingly able to 1v9 every game and average a 65% win rate, why is there such an overwhelmingly negative outlook on top lane as a whole? The answer is a combination of infrastructural and societal factors, for lack of a better term. Let's start with infrastructural. First, we should answer the all too important baseline question: why is top lane an island? The Summoner's Rift is an entirely symmetrical map with top and bot lane being near identical to each other in shape, length, and formation. By that logic, top and bot should have equal priority, right? On paper, yes. In practice, no. For one, we have champions. Top lane features 1 champion on each side, meanwhile bot lane has 2 champions on both sides. Pragmatically speaking, this means anything that positively affects you in bot lane should ostensibly carry more benefit to your team in the long run. Arbitrarily, let's say you set everyone's pressure to 20% at the game's open. If you successfully gank top, the top laner can steal 3% pressure from the enemy top laner, causing a 20-20 to become 23-17. Pretty solid. But if you gank the bot lane, both the ADC and support can take 2% pressure from the enemy bot lane, leading to 2 22-18s or an 8% total swing. Even outside of numerical values, advancing the bot lane not only affords the ADC a stronger combat advantage over the enemy ADC, but it can also free up the support to either accompany the jungler to do whatever they want around the map. So it makes sense to prioritize bot lane, where you can extract more value from your presence than in top lane. In theory anyway. Secondly, the objectives. For many years, there was no practical incentive for your team to give any more attention to top lane than absolutely imperative, because there was nothing top lane. Prior to 2024, the only meaningful thing on the map in the early game was the dragon, and so naturally, junglers had even more of a reason to hang out in bot lane to not only snowball the most profitable lane in the game, but also accumulate objectives to weaponize in later fights. Over the years, they made efforts to include some top lane objectives through Rift Herald way back when, and then recently the Void Grubs, but in the grand scheme of things, that's only a recent change made to the game. Now, onto the so-called societal factor end of things, we have another two reasons. First, habit. As a result of League having showed a clear bias towards bot lane for many years, the community at large collectively sort of acknowledged that top lane just isn't really a lane worth going for, even though, especially now more than ever, there's actual merit to giving some attention to top lane if you're able to. With the inclusion of Void Grubs and Rift Herald having a considerable lasting impact on map control in the mid-game, establishing priority in top lane can have the same knock-on effect on the game as bot lane does, if not more so. However, because statistically bot lane is still the more prudent choice to focus on, junglers and by extension the team overall still choose to focus on bot lane for most games. Second, guarantee. Even if you were to snowball the top lane, the consequences of that may not be fully realized until much later on in the game, if they're ever realized at all. For example, if you scored an early gank bot 2 for 0, your team can now enlist the help of support to rotate top for grubs while the ADC hangs back for a moment. In other words, you don't necessarily have to snowball your top laner to still get grubs and herald. You can snowball bot lane and then the support can accompany you top lane. Essentially, there's more ways to go about it. On the other hand, top lane can't really do that, at least not without taking a considerably greater risk. With the sheer number of nerfs to early game teleport, TPing or even roaming bot lane early is simply not an option. Back to the ADC support example, even with the support Mia during a round, there will still be someone bot lane who can manage to wave and soak up experience in gold, albeit they have to do so more cautiously so as not to get 2v1'd. In top lane, however, no one can cover for you, so if you roam, the enemy laner will score a free wave or two as well as maybe a tower plate before you can get back. Universal Demolish makes it super easy to score tower plates off a single auto or two. If you don't score like a double kill and dragon with your roam, you straight up lose more than you gain by doing this as a top laner. Where the benefits of accelerating top lane come into play is comparatively far later in the game. Unlike bot lane where the support can help you immediately after you help them, top laners might still have to focus on lane for a while. That being said, the potential payoff for helping top laner can be much higher, just only later down the road. We've all seen it before. Enemy top laner is up 3 to 4 levels over your top laner and ADCS to boot. How often do you see that in bot lane or even jungle or mid? Top lane can snowball much harder than just about every other role. If they can transition that lead over to the rest of the game, not only do they have an overpowered top laner raid bossing your entire team, but you have a worthless top laner who may as well just be AFK. Generally, a weak ADC at least has the benefit of scaling no matter what, and supports are never concerned about how much more gold they have over the enemy's support. A top laner very much cares about their gold and experience lead over their opponent, especially if they fall off, not only as a result of how top lane is perceived, but also as a result of Riot themselves playing into it. What this effectively coalesces into is that top lane is sort of like that Asian aging meme, where they look like they're doing nothing, and look like they're doing nothing, and still look like they're doing nothing, then all of a sudden, bam, they're out here myrtleizing everything 1v3, taking towers like some indestructible force of destiny. Top laners are a time bomb. They have the potential to do absolutely nothing, but they also have the potential to be the biggest difference maker in a game. One that if you just did something slightly differently in the early game could have drastically changed the outcome of the match. You've had this happen before. You and your team are trying to go for a Baron or a Dragon and are in a decent position to go for it, but the fat enemy top laner is pushing down a side lane. So you have to send your top laner to match them, only for your top laner to get dove on and solo killed. Alternatively, your top laner's teleport's on cooldown while theirs isn't, and now they can teleport top after forcing your top laner down to bot lane and 5v4 your team. Regardless of whichever outcome, your team is forced to abandon the objective. Granted, the mid laner can also do something similar, but typically top laners can exert overwhelming amounts of pressure in the mid to late game, and since everyone for the longest time ever never fully considers the capability of a strong top laner, they always get blindsided by it, even though most of the time, their top laner couldn't have done anything about it. Why it's such a miserable lane to play is because every single top laner knows this. They know just how overpowered top lane can really be, and they're frustrated that hardly anyone else other than top laners know this. Empirically, top lane has the lowest number of games where they single-handedly hard carry, but what few games they do hard carry, they carry so much harder than any other role. We're basically the only ones in the game that can go Ultra Instinct, with the caveat that, just like in Super, at least during the Tournament of Power arc, we can't access that state on demand. What I mean by that is, in most games, the gap in overall strength between the jungle, mid, and bot lane collectively on both teams is hardly ever insurmountable. Even if your bot lane goes 0-2 each against a 3-0 and 1-0 enemy ADC in support, all it takes is one jungle gank or a well-timed engage to score 2 for 0 right back in your direction. Zooming further out, a well-played 4v4 can still result in a win for the team at a disadvantage. All that being said, when top lane is brought into the equation, that's when it can really turn things around. Top laners who are ahead can exert their pressure in a way that forces a catch-22 situation for the enemy team, whereby it's unprofitable if not outright detrimental to try and shut them down, but if you don't shut them down, you're gonna lose the game. You're caught in a difficult spot where not acting jeopardizes a game, yet acting also jeopardizes a game. Top lane is the only role where the laners have to constantly engage with each other throughout the course of a match. For mid and bot lane, once laning phase is over, they don't really have to, it's usually just teamfights, but top laners almost always have to match each other in side lane or follow each other wherever one is going. This can deteriorate the experience quickly for top laners when you consider that top lane is by far the most matchup dependent role in the game. Due to the need for top laners to constantly match each other, a bad matchup will affect you far beyond the first 10 to 15 minutes. In light of how risky and not guaranteed the payoff is to gank top lane for the jungler, most of the time you're left to your own devices, in a landscape where mistakes carry the most severe implications. I'm pretty sure every top laner on planet Earth can agree with me when I say the most demoralizing thing in League of Legends is queuing into champ select and seeing first pick on the top left hand corner of your screen, because it means you're blue side, and by being on blue side, the red team gets last pick. 95% of the time you're blue side, you're forced to blind pick top lane, giving the enemy top laner the freedom to counterpick you with anything they please. As the blue side top laner, you're practically at a major disadvantage before you even so much as get into the game. Contrary to popular belief, there's no such thing as a fully safe blind pick top lane. There are champions who don't bleed out as badly, champions who outscale eventually, or champions who can impact the map in other ways by say roaming and whatnot, but every top laner hard loses to multiple champions. If you're wondering why now more than ever we're seeing a growing increase in ranged top laners, that is why. Counterpicking is so ridiculously overpowered that one of the best top laners in the game is Vayne. For a while we also had Vars top. These bastards outright destroy you if you pick a bruiser or some kind of immobile champion. Additionally, in a way, the specific role quest given to top lane has simultaneously improved and exacerbated this experience. On one hand, to its credit, it has made top lane impact more substantial when you could get it. With a strong lead, you're a solid 3 to 4 levels above literally everyone else in the game. A single level can easily amount to over 1,000 gold in practical combat value from stats and an ability upgrade, let alone 3 or 4 levels. A level 14 Riven might not be a cause for concern against a team of level 12s and 13s, but what about a level 16 Riven? That's a different story. However, with every top laner now gaining access to teleport, it makes counterpick matchups even more damning for the person being countered. Normally, you pay a heavy opportunity cost by going a combat summoner top, since in the mid to late game you get out-tempoed if the enemy top laner has TP and you don't. Now though, the enemy Jax can go ignite, destroy you in lane, and still be able to teleport around the map later on. Moreover, top laners get more experience than other laners, including and especially after the role quest. Getting solo killed once or twice can be enough to set you back 2 to 3 levels in the mid to late game and tons of CS. Worse if they freeze lane on you. The problem is, with that kind of level deficit, some top laners can even 1v2 you and your jungler if they try to help out, forcing you into a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. That ability to punish mistakes to such an extent and generate that massive of an advantage against your opponent is why top lane feels like it's the most overpowered role and most helpless role at the same time. There's no in between with this lane, you're either giving back shots or getting back shots. On the rare occasions you're able to go even with your laner, that doesn't help either because it puts you at the mercy of whichever team is gapping the other. So, 50% of the time, even if you get a lead, you might still lose because your team is down 3 dragons, Void Grubs, Rift Herald, and your bot lane is 0-10 before you can even get a chance to leave your lane. And 25% of the time you're hard counterpicked, or you died once and now the lane is over not even 5 minutes into the game. That leaves you with only 25% actual agency in deciding the outcome of the game. Mind you, technically this applies to every single role, but top laners just feel it the worst. Anyway, the best top laners, like the aforementioned challengers, are so freaking good at top-diffing their lane opponent that they constantly 1v9 every single game. But therein lies why top lane is so miserable. The game is statistically rigged against you in terms of agency. You have to be so much better than everyone else in order to consistently climb as a top laner compared to every other role where you have to only be slightly better, which results in the almost unanimously pessimistic outlook every top laner and even non-top laners have towards top lane. This role is truly where dreams die. Man, this felt good to make. In reality, top lane isn't impossible to climb, just circumstantially more difficult, but it does beg the question, do we need a paradigm shift in how we see the game to make it less polarizing? Like when we get the League Next initiative next year, do they need to include something massive so that top lane doesn't feel like the island that everyone thinks it is? What do you guys think? Do you agree with my points or do you think I'm heavily biased? Let me know in the comments down below. That'll be it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other League discussion episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.